Welcome back, Tribe. Have an episode here that we were covering halfway through. They were talking about the boys at the back of the queue, the gender gap reversal, and how women are making so much progress. We're just going to finish it out because I went on a mean ranting. We stopped halfway through. Let's just see the rest of the report.
Policy Director for the Centre for Social Justice, Ed Davis, spoke to GB News. Let's have a listen.
This makes sad reading this report. What is happening to these boys? When does it start to happen to them?
Yeah, you're right. It does make sad reading. It's quite a compendium of statistics, this report, and it starts early. So from the very first day at school, boys are likely to be quite considerably behind. It's interesting, Keir Starmer's 75% school-ready target. He wants 75% of children to be ready for school on their first day. And the reality is 75% of girls are, but only 60% of boys are. So it starts early. And then after that, it's similar throughout schooling. Boys will do worse in their GCSEs, they will do worse at A-level, they will do worse in T-levels, they will be less likely to go to university and do worse at university and be less likely to then get in the job market. So it is quite a serious compendium of statistics.
This is a time when we thought that in England, I emphasize England, we've been doing rather better in schools. Our international scores in things like maths, arithmetic, English, these had been rising for some time. Yeah. So this decline in the performance of boys comes at a time when actually our education system was doing a little bit better.
So yeah, and a lot of that is being carried by girls. So girls are doing well in the education system, particularly compared to boys. And what you're seeing is this sort of distance between them is now growing. So when you get up to A-levels now, girls will likely do about 1.5 grades per A-level better than boys will do, meaning that their prospects in the job market will be much better. And I suppose coming back to that point on the pay gap, in some ways, the pay gap itself is not an issue. It's what the pay gap indicates. And what it indicates is that journey up into the world of work is going very badly for boys at the moment.
There's a stunning number of young males who are not in education, employment or training. What is that number, or what is that proportion now?
So yes, it is about 500,000 now who are between 16 and 24 who are not in education, employment or training. It's about 1 in 7 young men compared to about 1 in 10 young women. So that's gone up quite steeply. And the proportion of those men has been going up for 20 or 30 years. And the reasons are complex as well. So the decline of traditional manufacturing jobs will certainly be part of that.
Yes.
But also we just talked about the education statistics. And actually, if you're in a competitive market and you haven't got the qualifications, then you're less likely to get a job, which is why it sort of matters right the way down to that first day at primary school to ask what is going on with boys here.
Now, how do you make this connection with fatherlessness? Because presumably as many girls are fatherless as boys.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we have found is that there is this huge rise of fatherlessness in the UK, and it is quite hard to talk about as well. But the reality is, I'm in my mid-40s, hard though I'm sure it is to believe. In the mid-1970s, about 90% of 16-year-olds lived with their mum and dad, and it's now about 50-50. So there's been this huge change.
Huge.
And most of those lone parent households are mothers rather than fathers, so it tends to be the father that's absent. And you're right, that will affect boys and girls. But the difference for boys is
Is the state in Britain also supporting single mothers to the extent they are in the United States, bailing them out for their bad decision? This is what happens when it's the welfare state in action. It's when you give people incentives to do bad shit, they do bad shit. If we didn't have any support for single mothers, and I know what people are saying, like, but we should, that's what a society's supposed to do. Well, okay, this is your result. 50% of households now are born in a single parent household, the children are. And then you're like, why is violent crime spiking? Why is homelessness, drug abuse, mental illness spiking? Why are people falling behind? Why is the social fabric of society deteriorating? There it is. This is what you get for incentivizing non-nuclear families. What we should do instead, you don't even have to punish them, just take away all the benefits and just provide them to families that stay together. As long as you're married together in one household, you get like tax breaks, you get, zero interest loans, you get forbearance options if you ever fall behind for your, mortgage payment. God knows what they could give you. They could give you a whole bunch of things. And people would be incentivized to find somebody, then they would stick it out longer. Instead, you could just leave now and then take someone else's half their shit. The guys always get screwed at court. The court biases with women, child support plus the nanny state kicking in, and boom. 50% of households are single mother. That's insane.
That first role model in their life, it is what that looks like to be a man. And so we talk about things like Andrew Tate as being a real problem. Actually, Andrew Tate is a sort of symptom of the fact that a boy now is more likely to have a smartphone than a father at home. And so, each day as they go out to school, are they being told by their father, you are loved, you belong here, go out, win the day, work hard? Or are they watching an Andrew Tate video? And what we're seeing is as that change has come during a boy's lifetime, more and more we're seeing the rise of this sort of feeling that there is something wrong because boys are not being fathered.
Is this the crusty view of my generation, looking down on this situation and saying this is caused by fatherlessness?
Yeah, so we were quite concerned about that. So we polled the general public, and then particularly we polled young men. And what we found fascinating was it is that group under 24 who are most concerned about fatherlessness. So about half the general public said, yes, this is a major problem. But in that young male group, it's about 2/3. And the reason straightforwardly being is they've seen it. It is part of their experience. They have
Also, imagine growing up in that without a father, and then you're looking at all these, quote, father figures online, men telling you how to be men. Some of them don't even have fathers themselves and don't know how to be men, but you're getting masculine influence from less than masculine ideals and people perpetuating absolute degenerate bullshit. Don't talk about family. They just talk about like smashing hoes left and right, becoming a millionaire, all this stuff that's counterintuitive to what the conservative / traditional / let's go back to the 1950s mentality that these, I guess you would say, more traditionalists in society are perpetuating. The golden years, right? When everybody was doing well and like society was humming and the streets were clean and we didn't have crime everywhere and fucking the streets weren't so disgusting and homeless people everywhere and all these drug addicts. And that's what they're talking about. Going back to those times. But they don't want to talk about the institutions that they ushered in that's causing the downfall of society today. And then they'll blame somebody like Andrew Tate and be like, Andrew Tate, it's all Andrew Tate's fault. Yeah, totally, dude. Like we've been on a downward decline since before that dude's been born. But then they're going to blame him for all the young boys feeling lost and acting up in school. Like, yeah, look at the society that you've ushered in through legislation. It's insane, dude. And you have these young boys now that are raised by smartphones and have no direction. They feel like they're lost, their identity. They don't even have one. What do they know about masculinity in a world that tells them masculinity is evil? What do they know about a place, to fit in somewhere where all male spaces have been shut down? What do they know about navigating life as they're coming of age when all their mentors have been taken away from them? Everywhere they look, from TV to movies to music, all celebrating women and girls' empowerment. But boys are left behind to do what? Fuck off, play video games, jacket all day? The media's example of what a man is a weak, spineless turd that takes direction from his strong, independent wife. And he's too stupid to even do the most basic of things like wipe his ass. He's useless. He's basically a sperm supplier. That's it. That's insane.
Grown up like that. Whereas I say, my generation, actually, most of us were lucky enough to grow up in fairly stable households, but that is not the case now.
Were you able to do any work? I think the answer is probably not, about the degree of fatherlessness. I mean, there will be many cases where the father is still in touch with the family. There'll be other cases where the father is not at all in touch.
Yeah.
Were you able to refine that?
So it's really hard to do. What we can say is that increasingly the father is not even present at birth. And actually, we have the worst statistics in Europe for that. We are the most sort of fragile and complex families in Europe. And that's, again, is this sort of a crusty conservative view. That was a study actually done by the Institute for Fiscal Studies. It has a financial impact. It has an equality impact. It is a very real thing we're experiencing. So it is more serious. It is important to say that simply not living with your father is not some sort of death sentence. Like plenty of children will do really well. This is not a judgment. But when you have this number of children not having regular contact with a father figure, it doesn't just affect your family, but actually you have whole communities where there are not male role models. And that's where you see things as well like gang crime coming in. You see boys being pulled into gangs because they can see charismatic male figures who will sort of give them hope in a way. And it's a sort of perverted hope, but it's a hope that they can be something, belong somewhere, make something of their life that they're maybe not seeing at home or their neighbour's home, or even at school where there are so few male teachers now.
Did your report look into ethnicity at all? We've seen in previous reports that Southeast Asian families, South Asian families tend to do disproportionately well.
Yeah. So the report looks at boys in the whole, but what you do see is in different areas of life, different ethnicities do differently. So very famously in education, white working class boys do very badly. And that has been talked about quite a bit before. But as you say, particularly Chinese, Asian, Indian families, even children on free school meals tend to do better than the average. Again, though, when we look at what's going on in those families, they put a very high value on family structure, stability, and education. Those things are very important in those communities. So
every single thing you just mentioned is what the liberal governments are trying to tear down. Gender ideology, gender constructs, patriarchal constructs, masculine constructs, relationship dynamics, marriage, all that shit is antiquated human constructs that don't belong in the modern world. This is the result of all of that shit. This is what you voted for. This is what happens with progressive ideals. They fail in the real world. The animals no longer are having kids. We're too stressed out. We can't afford anything. The economics are messed up. We're headed for population collapse. Instead of booming because technological advances and we can farm with much higher yields, one fucking acre, excuse me, I'm over here saying hectare like I'm in Europe. Well, I am. But 1 acre of plot of lands could now farm triple, quadruple the yields that they used to 50 years ago due to advance in technology. But no, okay, that doesn't matter. So, we used to hear, I think 20, 30 years ago, they were talking about population boom and we can't feed anybody and like global warming and like humans are the cause of all the problems on Earth and there's just too many of us. And now it's like completely reversed to like, white people, you're just not having enough kids. So we'll bring in a ton of migrants to help shore up the workforce and keep the nanny state going while you basically just die out, which solves nothing because the kids of the migrants then in this very same system adopt its cultural norms and they themselves don't have kids like their parents before them. So there's something wrong with the culture itself, with the economic system and its incentives itself. Governance itself is the issue. And no one wants to say shit like that out loud. Instead, we want to be seen as woke, as super progressive, as super understanding and tolerating of all people and cultures and ideas at the expense of what made us great. And this is what you have, the downfall of the West.
In other areas of the report, we're looking at things like crime. So actually in crime, there's a disproportionate number of black boys in prison at the moment and in trouble with the police. So there are differences in ethnicities in different areas, but largely the problem we're looking at is around boys.
Yeah, and if they look for like the black boys, for example, what he just cited with the prison statistics, how many of them come from single mother homes? I bet you it's shockingly high. If the overall number is 50, the black community must be super high in the UK. Somebody find those stats for me because that's the only way you can explain those horrendous outcomes. Because in the United States, the horrendous outcomes are exactly for that reason. No father in the home.
A sad problem. That's what we said at the beginning. Any solutions?
So, well, this is the first stage. We're going to be doing this over the next couple of years. What we wanted to do today was put out this massive statistics to say we've got a problem here. I think it's still a problem that people don't like to talk about. So we thought the first step has to be recognizing we have one. And then over the next 2 years, we're going to be looking at a number of different areas, looking for solutions, looking at employment, fatherlessness, education, the criminal justice system, male suicide being a real problem at the moment, the biggest killer of men under 50 still. So we'll be looking at these things in periods over the next 2 years.
For example, I was stunned by the statistic about not in education, employment or training. I thought it was more or less compulsory for people to be one of those. What's changed there? How are these people slipping in such huge numbers through the net?
Yeah, I mean, one of the other stories that's coming out today actually is about changes to sickness benefit. And we're seeing a really large number of young men fall into long-term sickness. Young people and mental health is one of the drivers of increasing sickness benefit, and men within that are a really significant portion. But again, when you come back and look at some of the drivers of this, you will find some of the things, poor education, low family stability, things like that will be part of that problem.
It may give you some satisfaction. I see that your report has really got a lot of publicity. There's a lot of talk about it in the press. Congratulations on the work that you've done, even though it's highlighting a problem that we just wish were not there. Thank you very much.
We can no longer afford to ignore our lost boys.
A little late. Only yesterday, the feminists in Australia were claiming, I was reading this, I think, on the other video, excuse me. Can we stop calling it a pay gap, which is disingenuous? It is a earnings gap. Former BBC guy still thinks gender pay gap is not because women and men make different career choices, yeah. The main cause of fatherlessness is the family court system and the narcissistic mothers that exploit it. Ding, ding, ding. Many fathers would love to have access to their children, but aren't allowed because of false claims of abuse. Shock, horror, graphs. Well, who could have seen this coming? I think to address this lack of fathers, we've got to look out for narcissistic individuals influencing women's charities, certain femme-centric activists, children's services, and family courts. We got an ideology problem, and I think narcissistic personality disorder, especially splitting it at its core. Yeah. Instead of telling fathers to be in their children's life when a relationship breaks down and utilizing half-baked policies to help them be a part of their children's lives, how about you tell women to stop breaking up families? That's a good one. Being masculine now is not playing the rigged game. America needs a middle-class party. Yeah. As a mother who brought up her 3 sons up on their own, 2 different fathers, I don't agree that they are more likely to be criminals or bad fathers. It's all about the way society has changed and values of our culture. Being allowed to disintegrate into too much concern to other cultures, we must get back to being British and look after our own first. The world. The outlook of the BBC guy is largely how we got to where we are with respect to the issue. Yeah, there you go. An easy way to fix fatherlessness would be to stop making fathers subsidize the mother's lifestyle. That's true. They're also skipping how in single mother households, the mothers tend to not discipline their kids properly and push self-hating ideas onto their sons. That's another one. The stats are clear. Kids from single father households have roughly the same upbringing as kids from 2-parent household, yet priority is always given to the mother. Yeah. The statistics show that if you're brought up by a single father, you do just as well as the 2-parent household. You have the same outcomes. It's only the single mothers that are failing their own households. I wonder why. Yeah, the report discusses young men and boys, but the guy keeps going on about women. Yeah, the vast majority of these situations where the father is missing is because the mom kicked the father away. These journalists really make it sound like there's an epidemic of fathers suddenly leaving everything behind and not an epidemic of mothers using the law to keep the father away from their own child. That's a fact. Bringing this issue to light now is a little too late. It took decades for society to be the way it is now and decades more in reversing. I fully agree with that statement. I don't think we're going to change this anytime soon. We'll all be dead. Everybody watching this will be dead by the time this manages to fully reverse course. You're going to have a president or a head of state with some real balls to go after the benefits women have been receiving from the state itself, on all the courts, from men paying into, for example, child support. In the United States, the courts take a percentage of the child support payments. Can you imagine that? The court makes money. The court profits from child support payments. It's not about the kids. Then the courts also profit from long, drawn-out battles for alimony and all that other shit. It's a racket, dude. Divorce and child support is a racket that the state makes money off of. They don't care about the families. Step 1, remove all the incentives and profits a court gets from child support or alimony. Step 2, remove all incentives and double standards that give women the ability to leave. For example, she could be cheating on you and then no fault divorce and then gets half your stuff. If you're found guilty of like adultery or whatever else, breaking your vows for marriage, you should not get access to anything at all. You forfeit half of everything earned during the marriage, period. Eliminate permanent alimony. The moment you get a boyfriend or dating, living with another man, and it can be proven by, say, the ex-husband, you forfeit the alimony and all the payments. There's so many things, guys. That's just off the top of my head. There's a million things they can do. If you're married for less than 5 years, you should also forfeit all rights to splitting assets. That's not even married long enough to make a dent in your career or change your trajectory in life. You can't just get married, divorce 3 years later, and then take someone's shit, all their hard-earned fucking stuff. That's also bullshit. It's insane, dude. I mean, it's simple what they have to do, but they're not incentivized. Until men start voting in droves for people that start talking about these issues and make it so painful that if you don't also talk about and make some of these changes, or at least promise on the campaign trail, it has to be an automatic loss. So men here need to raise their voice and start petitioning and start organizing the way all these femme groups organized, and shit will start to change. But until then, men will just take the other path out of just calling it a quits. That's the day. We're done. Later, checking out the system. It's a slower process there, but the economic pain is the same. Oh well. We'll see what happens, boys, in due time. Anyways, see you on the next one. Take care, everybody.